I used the Whimsical platform on ChatGPT to create the flowcharts to describe my code for every single coding assignment we had. The funny thing is, all of the Whimsical flowcharts that were made, they all follow the same pattern, which I feel like made it really easy to understand. So when I explain it, a lot of the things are going to sound very, very similar and repetitive and redundant because that's the way that Whimsical broke it down so that I could understand, which I appreciated. So we're going to start with the market data dashboard. And up here is that start of the code and all those packages that you have to have downloaded in Python to perform this code that we've written out. Then you start with this line 8 right here where you download the stock data. But then it's funny because almost a decent amount of this code, well, 2 of them, and every other code that I have, they all have if-else statements. So here we're downloading the stock, but it's saying if we can be successful in calculating daily returns. Oh, saying if we can successfully download this stock, then we will calculate the daily returns. But if we're not successful, we keep trying again. We put in the 2-second delay so that way we don't hit the limits and the IP blocks. But then if that doesn't work, we're just going to print off this error message. And then we're just going to return an empty data frame, and we're just going to say it didn't work. End of the code. But if it did work, we'll go ahead and calculate those daily returns, and we'll calculate the volatility. Then we'll create this general summary, which is just, again, this is just that comment line is describing what all of this code does. And then that also follows another if-else statement, where it's saying if the data is empty, meaning up here we couldn't calculate, we couldn't pull the data, then we're going to print another error message and just let them know this code is not going to perform the way it should. But if the data is available, we're going to display and save the summary, which it does by defining the parameters and fetching the data first. So that way it can create these calculations needed down here. Then it's going to display that summary and save the summary. Then we get to another plot daily returns, another if-else statement. And it says, okay, so we're going to apply our daily returns. If we were successful in getting our returns in the previous step, then we will show and plot the data, and that's the end of the code. If we couldn't pull the data, then we're going to tell the user that we had a failure to calculate, print the error code, end of the code. And that's that one. Then let's go to technical analysis system. This code follows a very similar footprint. It's a bit longer, but similar footprint, where we begin, and these are all of the packages that you need to run the code. This is also where the code starts. Then we have the download stock data, which is this line right here is where we're starting. Then again, we have that if-else statement saying that if we're successful, then we're going to calculate those daily returns and validity. If we're not successful, we're going to print off an error message, and then we're going to continue moving on with our code. Then after those are calculated, then we are going to the general performance summary, which again, just that comment telling you what's going to happen. Again, following that generate performance summary to provide key insights into stock's historical performance before making the trading decisions. That's why we're generating the performance summary. Then we're going to calculate the moving averages. That's all this code right here. Then we're going to have a function to generate trade signals. And these trade signals are based off of the moving averages that were found above. Then we're going to have this back test trading strategy, which simulates how trading strategies would have performed historically. And that's how, I believe that's what they compare to when it comes to that buy-sell decision. Then we come down here again, we're going to define those parameters, fetch that data so we can make our analysis. We are going to calculate and store all of our calculations. Then all of this, and this is where it's getting displayed. and stored. This is where it's getting calculated, and this is where it's getting displayed and stored. Then right here is where we're plotting all of that data. This is where we're plotting all of that data, and you're going to see everything that was calculated, and that's the end of the code. Now we're on to portfolio analysis tool. All right. This one, we have the start of the code with the packages that we need to run the code. This is where we download the stock and market data. Then again, applying that if-else statement right here, saying if we can successfully pull this data, then we will calculate those daily returns and that volatility right there. If we can't, we're going to print off this error message, but we're going to keep going with the code. Then we jump all the way down here to where we are going to calculate the portfolio statistics. That's what all this code's doing. Then we're going to calculate the beta, which is what all of this code's doing right here. Then again, we're defining those parameters, fetching that data so that the portfolio performance analysis can be made. I've learned through ChatGPT, if we don't define the parameters and fetch the data, the analysis step cannot happen, which is actually the next step, which is that portfolio, where we are doing the we're doing the portfolio performance analysis, where we're displaying that data, storing the values. Then down here is where we're actually going to plot every value that we just found. And again, also following that is if-else statement, saying if we could actually pull the returns, then this is all we're going to plot. If we couldn't pull the returns, empty, no returns to plot, end of code. But else statement being if you could pull that data, you're going to display all of this. And that's just the end of that code. Then we're going to go to market sentimental. There we go. Okay. This, again, follows that same flow chart, where this is the start of the code, and these are the packages we need to be able to perform our code. Then right here is where we're going to download the stock market data. Again, find that if-else statement. If we cannot pull that data, retry. Again, we have that time delay. Then we're going to print off error message. We're going to keep going with the code. But the else-if statement is if you can pull that data, then we are going to calculate the daily returns. Then we come down to this right here. And again, another if-else statement where we are calculating the market breadth indicators. And this is the measure of the overall strength and weakness of the stock market. Again, it's saying if we could not pull the data from up here, error message, leave it empty, keep moving on. But if we could, go ahead and calculate all this, store all of that. And store all the returns that we found. Then we jump down to generating the market health report, which is all of this functions right here. Again, we are defining and fetching. We are defining the parameters and fetching the data so that way we can perform our analysis. Then we are displaying and saving everything that we just did right up here so that way we can plot the market breadth indicators down here. Okay, dividends analysis tool. Okay. So again, we start at the top of our code and we have the packages that we need to be able to perform our code. But this one is different, because it has two separate lines where you download dividend history, but dividend and stock history. But the difference is up here, we're downloading stock history, but this stock history that we're downloading is to be able to make adjustments to the closing price. And this dividend history that we're downloading is so that we can have the historical dividend payment. And both of these follow the if-else statement, saying if we can successfully pull this data that we need, then we're going to calculate the dividend growth rates, which are right here. But if we cannot, we're going to print off these error messages. And before we print off the error messages, we are going to have our 2-second delays just to make sure that we can try to pull that data and our IP address is not getting blocked by Yahoo Finance. And I do remember Dr. Z talking about using another platform for pulling data. When I tried to use that platform, it was not working, and Yahoo Finance was the only one that was actually letting me perform my code, even if my IP address was getting blocked after few attempts. I knew it was working, so that's why I stuck with it instead of using the alpha one that he talked about. Then we jump down here to where we're going to calculate the projected future dividends, which is this whole big chunk right here, again with that if-else statement, saying if we couldn't pull the dividends and we couldn't pull the historic stock rates that we needed for adjusting closing prices, again, we're going to leave it empty, but we're just going to print off that cute little error message. But if we could pull it, we're going to do all of this calculation right here. Then again, we're defining those parameters and fetching the dividend data so that we can perform the analysis where we're going to calculate, display, and store, which is what lines 65 through 81 are doing. So that way we can plot all the analysis that we have found, and that is the end of that code. This is the last one. So again, up here is that start of the code and the packages that we need to be able to perform this code. Right here is where we are downloading the sector data for EFT. Again, having that if-else statement. If you can't download the data, again, the time delay, trying to work around the IP address block. If not, we're going to print off that error message. But if you can pull that data, then we're going to go ahead and calculate the sector performance. Then we're going to come down and we're going to identify the sector trends. Then again, we're defining those parameters, fetching the data, so that way our analysis can be performed where it is performed, saved, and displayed, so then it can be plotted as the sector performance. Again, following that if-else statement, saying if we could not perform analysis, error message in the code, but if we could perform analysis, we're going to plot it in a visual, appealing way to our users.